Well, we're making this fun, and I thought I would share a Q&A with all of you to lead us to kind of inspire your questions. I was working with a mother and her son yesterday on Zoom, and she's a mother of four boys, all under the age of 12. And by the sounds of it, this particular boy that I was working with, he's 9, seems to be quite an angry, feisty young boy at times. And the question, really the overarching theme, was to help him develop some strategies and tools to manage his anger. And so the sessions have been, I mean, this is probably irrelevant, but the sessions have been kind of widely gapped. So we're making progress, however, not as quickly as I think we could. So the I wanted to sort of share that little setup and a few more little funny parts, because in all honesty, it got me thinking that how we label our children really sets them up for how they are. And when I was listening to her describe some of the recent fiascos in the house, and baseballs and things flying through rooms and hitting children, I was also listening for how she was describing this particular son, and the words and the labels that were really so descriptive of not the boy I was seeing in front of me on Zoom. And it led me to think after just how parents label their kids, and then that languaging and that expectation and that, I want to say, creation of behavior, it flourishes based on our expectations. And then I began to think, well, how we do this for everyone, how we do this for our partners, how we do this for people in general, the labels that we put onto others, it's almost like, it is like they become this, right, in our lived world. So this beautiful child, 9 years old, comes onto the the Zoom call, and imagine he's wearing fuchsia bright lipstick, not because he's wearing lipstick, but because his mother left that setting on Zoom, and now he's got this bright pink lipstick on his face, and he's very aware of it. And we were kind of laughing, and his mother doesn't know how to turn off that setting, so he's going through the whole Zoom call with red lips. And to his credit, he did it, which just speaks to how sweet this child is. When we label people, when we label our children, when we label others, they show up as that. They begin to walk in those footprints. And it is something I'm going to speak with the mother about further, but it's a great little story that I bring because it reminds us of how we all mirror others, and how it can be difficult at times to see someone as they truly are when we put a label or several labels on them. So that's my opening Q&A that I'm going to share with all of you, and I'm opening it up now for any questions from you. I hope that was helpful. I hope it makes you think a little bit about any labels that you might put, positive or negative, on others, and then notice what happens, because when you put a negative label on someone, you begin to, and this is how the brain works, you begin to find evidence for that falsehood or perception or label, whatever it is. The brain works to find that. And so you're finding evidence of that, sometimes without evidence being there. All right. Did you get the image of this cute little 9-year-old with fuchsia lips? Poor thing. Oh my goodness. Welcome, John. Hi, how are you? Great to see you here. I'm opening up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm opening this.
That's a good story. We learn so much from how we observe kids.
And the labels that parents put on their own children, right?
Yes. Yeah, it sticks.
So if there are any questions that any of you have, I'm all yours. Yeah.
Well, if I may toss out, and
Sure.
and maybe I understand how we become concerned about not wanting to be judgmental. We have to recognize circumstances and where all of us are coming from, and to get a clearer picture or appreciation, I guess, for where when we observe something that we don't know the complete story, and we have to be in some ways cautious, but also be kind. And I think of how I want to respond and recognize that, particularly in the community that I'm part of. I mean, the people that I'm in contact with, where it's contact. I'm just going to put in the kind of the other picture when we get into a lot of things that we are out of our control. I just moments ago got off a call with my old college roommate, who is a lawyer and lives in Minnesota. And again, he was sharing with me what he was seeing as just the total invasion of what would be perceived as rights of people, regardless of what their status might be. And my point is, I have become quite frightened and concerned about what is happening at a national level. And I realize all I can do is be active in the community and be as kind as I can be. But still, there is that space where you say you can't judge. And I guess I'm struggling with that, because I can appreciate that people who have a completely different opinion of me, I have to respect whatever is their bias or compared to my bias. But I don't feel that I can be frozen into just saying, well, I can't judge, because so often my actions are going to be dependent upon, or at least I see it being somewhat dependent upon, judgments that I'm making, not just about myself, but what I think I should be doing as a citizen, and as I observe others who I think should be, again, exerting a certain amount of responsibility in the roles that they play. So I've run a bit here, but maybe just to kind of raise that question of how we assess judgment when it gets into spaces that are really quite a bit outside of our immediate circle.
How do we assess judgment when it is outside of our immediate circle? Did I get that?
Right. I mean, to the extent I think there is a need for us to be exercising judgment in actions that we might be taking, and yet I'm hearing that no, you don't. You really got to pull yourself back from making that kind of judgment, and again, that's what I'm wrestling with.
I think for me, it helps to have a bit more of the story, and maybe you'll give us an example. I think of judgment actually in two ways. So I think of judgment as what I think is the most common definition, which is negative judgment, or judging someone wrongly or incorrectly. And then I immediately think about the solution to that. Maybe this will help in terms of your question. And the more information we can gather, the more understanding we can have, the more questions we can ask in a neutral space, and just holding that space for ourselves to make a more informed decision or have a more informed answer, right, to something. Then we can make a choice or a decision or take action in a way that certainly feels and honors our self best. I think the word judgment can be tricky, because the true definition is when you're making this harsh criticism of someone or something that is not perhaps entirely accurate. And so for me, it's always been about how can I continue to how can I continue to get the information I need? How can I continue to ask questions so I can be sure that I have all of the facts? And then I can make an informed decision. I'm no longer judging, perhaps inaccurately, perhaps accurately, but it's really now an understanding. And the difference too, John, is a person knows the difference. If you're judging them, and if you're judging them harshly or critically, and if you're commenting based on information you have, that is so apparent to the person receiving it, right? They're not going to feel judged if you're asking and clarifying and active listening back to them and maybe asking another question and then offering an opinion, that's going to feel entirely different. Does that help answer your question?
Excuse me. It does in the context of how we conduct ourselves and seeking with our own curiosity to learn more about the other position and not being judgmental, but let me learn more about this and giving that person to speak. And so that's so good. Unfortunately, I guess the context I'm thinking of, just to be very candid, it's in a political scene. When I see what the current President Trump is doing, I don't have the opportunity for that dialogue. I do know I have to remain curious and recognize, and it's very important to see how others are defending his particular role, so that I'm trying to grapple with that information. But again, over so many experiences, and not to belabor it, but so many experiences from a distance, I'm gathering information that it leads me to a very harsh judgment, and it's not a chance that I would ever have, as would be in a community, to be able to really, let's have some open sharing. And so I guess I'm just sharing kind of the frustration in any setting where you've got, so many external things going on where you just won't have that liberty or that ability to discern. And so it's just a matter of weeding through conflicting observations, conflicting stories, and you end up picking a side. So maybe I'm just sharing the dilemma that perhaps we sometimes have to contend with in terms of how we process this in a community setting where we can have that fair dialogue. In other settings where we just don't have that chance.
So that's a great example. It helps me understand it much better. And so is your question really about what do you do when you've got people in your community with a very different opinion than yourself?
That's part of it, because what actions, but that's really a good question, because that's where I do have the opportunity for a dialogue, and I absolutely have to be very open and candid and listen. And so that I think is very good. But I do, in defending my own view as to what I think is right and what is wrong, I am now basing it on conflicting information, but where I think, again, I'm making a judgment. But what I have to learn is that in that judgment, what action do I take? And where I then can be speaking and getting engaged with others, that's where I have to practice what we're sharing here. So that's good clarity. Thank you.
You're welcome, and you're not alone. I mean, I think I've heard more in my sessions with clients in the arena of politics in the last couple of years than I've ever before. And the theme is very similar to what you're describing. And friendships have been, weathered and broken, and family ties have been, in conflict, and all of that because of differing opinions. And certainly the opinions that are closely aligned with how a person believes and thinks and what they know to be right and wrong. And so you bring up a really good point, because judgment that is aligned with your values and your morals, I would say, is a good type of judgment to hold. It's a judgment that's based on looking at the facts as much as you have the facts, and then also assessing based on what's moral, what's good, what's just, what's legal, all of the things that we hope to have in our society. And I think then when you make a judgment, you're making a judgment really more of moral ground. And I think that supersedes any concern about, will somebody be offended? Will somebody have harsh feelings? It then becomes a question of delivery. How can I say this? Because someone's asking me, I'm going to share my honest opinion or judgment on something. How can I deliver the message in a way that's as neutral as possible and yet as firm and certain as possible, so people understand my position, my beliefs? Yeah. Does that help?
Yep, no, a lot. Thanks.
You're so welcome. It's a great question. And I think one I think all of us, even outside of the US, are facing day in and day out. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to dual citizenship with U.S. and Canada. Let me just leave it at that.
You may have that. You may have that. Colleen, do you have any questions in our beautiful Q&A today, or is it just okay to listen? That's also good.
I mean, I have many, many, many questions, as you know. I mean, in line with the retreat, I'm still struggling with the wholeness thing, like being whole and feeling whole, and I mean, the one simple question I can ask is, what does it feel like to be whole? Basically.
Wonderful, perfect question. It's yeah, no, and I know you felt it. So feeling, what is it like to feel whole is answered by asking, what is it like to fully accept myself as I am? What is it like to love and appreciate myself right now? What is it like to wholly honor all of who I am? What is it like to be comfortable with who I am right now? What is it like to appreciate and enjoy my own company? It's all the things that say I'm complete as I am, even as I'm also a work in progress on this or this. And then I'm whole and complete now, currently, even as I'm working on things and as I'm not the way that I would, not completely the way that I'm still striving to be. And I think when you start to ask those questions and you realize that there's so many moments you live feeling wholeness because you appreciate yourself, or you know you're a good friend, or you know you're a good person, or you know you're honest. I think all of those pieces felt are illustrations of how we are whole. Does that give you some reference?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me, how about this? Tell me a time when you felt whole, maybe not necessarily the moment, but the feeling of it. So a moment when you've, based on what I just suggested, what have you felt? What's the feeling of feeling whole?
Peace.
That's a wonderful answer.
I don't know that I've ever felt whole in my whole life, but something to strive for, right?
Absolutely. And the fact that you're talking about it
Yeah.
and you're asking about it says it's going to be a feeling and an experience you're going to be living more and more.
It's going to be that feeling. It's like what I'm giving reference to these days is like, I have a day to myself without sleeping. We're having our retreat early in the morning. It's all peaceful, like everything is. And I say, like, the angels are singing. That's what I keep saying. And you hear the angels singing because it's just peaceful. And so when the angels are singing constantly, that's when I'll be whole. I love that so much.
It also sounds like, and you and I've had our one-on-one, so, you've given me a little bit of backdrop, but it also sounds like this is something that you can strive for and cultivate more of. And now that you've been having it and feeling it, it's like, I want more of this, right? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great question. I encourage you to bring it anytime to our live sessions in the retreat as well. It's a wonderful question. I don't know that people have thought about what does it mean to be whole. Perhaps as we are, in the way that we're describing it and the way we're talking about it. So I'm really glad you asked. Thank you. Yeah. Amazing. And she's got 40 more questions that have come up since the retreat, and we'll be answering all of those. Yeah. Please keep them coming. Yeah. I want to say thank you both so much for being here. Those were amazing questions.
Great question.
I love them. Yeah. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. And sometimes, John, the best judgment is I am going to focus on my life and all of the goodness in my life and let everything else just be because I can.
It's very good. Yep. That's why we smile. That's why we can smile.
For sure.
Absolutely. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Thank you both. Thank you all so much for being here. Okay. Have a wonderful weekend. Until next time.